All right, so we're going to go to Abarim, chapter 8, 9, and 10. And I'm going to do this quickly, family, so as not to hold you long. But this is important, okay? And especially as we consider the conversation that we were having yesterday, because what are a key when he brought up the subject of tassels, he's under the impression that zit saved someone. So wearing zit is a must, and if you don't wear it, then you're not saved. Well, there's a again we talk about the word saved, and now there is misunderstanding concerning salvation. In that sense, it is those who endure to the end that shall be saved, and so even in that, there is misunderstanding. But we're going to look at this. So we're going to go to Abarim chapter 8. Let me get that up on the screen here um, very quickly. I'm going to begin in chapter 8. We look at and we read through chapter 9, and of course we will have to go to chapter 10 to get a full understanding. All right, so um, let's begin in chapter 8. I'm going to make it a little bigger. I'm going to be putting it on the screen here shortly, family, so you can see. Um, just bear with me just for a second while I get it in order. Let me see if I can make it bigger. All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so I began by saying a few minutes ago that there's much misunderstanding when it comes to Shahul and when it talks about Torah. Within Torah, there are different contracts within Torah, and so all of Shahul's letter, Shahul is writing to a people who had been scattered. All of his letters, he is writing to a people who were scattered and who had lost their identity, who had lost Yahuwah's word, and who had no knowledge of Yahuwah, who were being reintroduced to Yahuwah, being reintroduced to themselves, being reintroduced to Yasharal, being reintroduced to the word of Yahuwah. And so there were other people at the same time that were teaching about redemption. They're teaching them about what it takes to be redeemed, how you are redeemed, you see. And so there were other people out there that were teaching about redemption, being redeemed, to be put back into right standing with Yahuwah. But the problem is that those people that were teaching this, they're actually teaching the old contract. You see, the contract that says in order for you to be redeemed, what redeems you is you've got to redeem yourself through the blood of goats and bulls, and through circumcision, and through the wearing of zit. You've got to redeem yourself through these things that they're teaching, that this is how your redemption comes. This is what puts you back into right standing with Yahuwah. And the reason why they're teaching this is because they deny the fact that Yahuwah did come to redeem Yasharal back to himself. So, in other words, they deny Mashiach. They deny Mashiach. So anybody that you hear who tell you that you have to save yourself, that you have to redeem yourself, that individual denies Yahuwah HaMashiach. They deny Yahuwah HaMashiach. You see, in other words, they deny Yahu, our deliverer. They deny Yahu, our salvation. You see, they deny Yahusha. And so this is what Shahul is contending with. The same thing that we contend with today. And so he's dealing with the portion of the contract that deals with redemption. So we want to keep that in mind, family, as we read the writings of Shahul, because that's what Shahul is dealing with. Now, you're going to see this as we read through this text. You will see it plainly. When we get to where he finally makes the point, I'm going to point it out to you. Yes, absolutely nothing new under the sun. I'm going to point it out to you, family, and you will see that he makes this point abundantly clear, that this is what he is talking about, not what everybody else says he's talking about. So let's begin here in chapter 8. Okay. So what Shahul, keep in mind now that Shahul is writing to people of Yasharal that were scattered. Shahul is writing to the Gentiles, a people who had been divorced by Yahuah, a people who had been put away by Yahuah, a people who had lost their identity, a people who, even if they wanted to come back to Yahuah, they didn't know how to come back to Him. And now their situation is confused by people who are telling them that if you want to come back to Yahuah, you need to go get you a goat, get you a sheep, or get you a bull, get you a pigeon, get you something, and you need to go make that blood sacrifice in order that you might be received by Yahuwah. You got to redeem yourself. Well, there is no one that can redeem themselves. None. There is no one that can redeem themselves. And so that is what Shahul is addressing. Okay, so let's keep this in mind as we read. Now, the summary of what we're saying is we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens. Now, seated at the right hand. Now, whether or not it should be written this way, excuse me, is questionable to me. Because what it does is it it when it's written in this such a way, it helps to promote the identity, the idea of the doctrine of the Trinity, and so it gives you the idea that there is actually, if you go with the Christians, there are a few thrones in heaven. And because there is a Trinity, then you would have to say that there are three thrones in heaven. Well, here you see at least two of them. But what we do know from the scriptures is that when it speaks of the right hand, it is speaking about the ability of Yahuwah to act. When you see right hand in scripture, it speaks about the ability of Yahuwah to save. It's speaking about the working of Yahuwah, you see. And so right hand speaks of the power of Yahuwah, the ability of Yahuwah to act, the ability of Yahuwah to save. It is not speaking about another throne in the heavens. That comes from Trinitarian doctrine, which is not scriptural teaching. Okay. And so he says, now the summary of what we are saying is we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand. Again, I don't know truly because I don't have the original text here to tell if this is truly how it should be written, because even the Greek text that we have available to us cannot be trusted. Um, we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves in the set apart place and of the true tent, which Yahuwah set up, and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and slaughters. So it was also necessary for this one to have somewhat to offer. For if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the Torah. Okay, now right here, I want to highlight verse 4 dealing with another matter, and I want to talk about it just for a quick second. I'm not going to dwell on it. So, what verse 4 tells us is that during this time of Shahul writing this information to the scattered people of Yasharal, during this time, the Haykal was still standing. So this would explain why the people would still travel to Jerusalem in order to keep the feast, because the Haykal was still standing, the priesthood was still in effect, and if the Haykal was still standing and the priesthood was still in effect, then the thing that represents the presence of Yahuwah was still in its place, right? Now, even though Yahuwah had removed his presence, the box was still there. And so these puffed up people did not want to admit that the presence of Yahuwah was no longer there, you see. And so they would still pretend as if the presence is still there. But nonetheless, the priesthood was still in effect. The most set apart place was still there. The Ark of Contract was still there. And so that's why the people would continue to go to Jerusalem for the feast. everything was still in place. So even while Shaul was writing this, verse 4 lets us know that the Haykal had not yet been torn down. So he says, for if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the Torah. So even right now, at this moment in time that Shaul was speaking, the priests were still offering up the slaughterings, right? Who serve a copy and shadow of the heavenly, as Masha was warned when he was about to make the tent, where he said, see that you make all according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. But now he has obtained a more excellent service, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better contract, which was not constituted on better, which was constituted on better promises. For if that first contract had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. For finding fault with them, he says, see, the days are coming, says Yahuah, when I shall conclude with the house of Yasharal and with the house of Yehuda a renewed contract. Not according to the contract that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Matzrayim, because they did not continue in my contract, and I disregarded them, says Yahuah. Because this is the contract that I shall make with the house of Yasharal after those days, says Yahuah, giving my Torah in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each one his neighbor, and each one his brother, saying, know Yahuah, because they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. Because I shall forgive their unrighteousness, and their transgressions, and their lawlessness I shall no longer remember. By saying renewed, he has made the first old. Now what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing. Now pay attention to verse 13 here. He says, but and keep in mind as you read verse 13, Shahul, when we read these writings, we have to keep in mind historical context. Okay? So people read this as if Shahul was speaking today, right now. If Shahul was speaking right now, he would not say that that which has become old and and grow and growing age is near disappearing. He would not say near disappearing. If Shahul was speaking today, he would say that which had become old has disappeared. So what is it that had become old that he speaks of? He says, but I shall forgive their unrighteousness and their sins, their transgressions and their lawlessness, and I shall no longer remember. By saying renewed, he has made the first old. Now what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing. So what he is saying, remember, he started off by talking about the priesthood, right? And so he talked about the fact that the sacrifices are still being offered up. But then he said, that's old. What was the role of the priest? What was the role of the priest in Yasharal? All right, let's look at this here for a moment. In regards to redemption, the redemption of the people. In regards to redemption, the redemption of the people, what was the role of the priest in Yasharal? Because that's what Shahul is dealing with. He's real dealing with the people being put back in right standing with Yahuah. And now that thing that was responsible for this is growing old, you see, and disappearing at that time. It's growing old and disappearing. In other words, the priesthood were the ones, the Kahanim was responsible for redeeming the people. When the people brought their sacrifices, they had to bring it to the Kahanim, who then presented it to Yahuah. But so the Kahanim was the mediator between Yasharal and Yahuah. But Shahul says now that there is a new mediator under this new contract that has been established. And Yahuah himself is the mediator. Yahuah, who came and took on the form of flesh, now becomes the mediator. And presently at that presently back then and even now he continued to reside in the heavens until he returns, as we're going to see as he continued to read. So he says that which has become old is now growing aged and disappearing. And it did disappear. So what was it that disappeared? That priesthood that was no longer needed for the redemption of the people. That priesthood disappeared. Now, is that to say that the priesthood is gone for good? No, but in regards to the redemption of the people, in regards to putting the people back into right standing with Yahuwah, we will never see a priesthood functioning in that role ever again, because Yahuwah himself became our high priest. You see, and so Shaul was saying here that that priesthood is disappearing. The people up there slaughtering right now, like he said, that the priesthood was still here and they're still offering up slaughter in the set apart place, but they are disappearing and they did disappear. So today, the priesthood has disappeared. Now, the priesthood will be reestablished, but it will not be for the purpose of redeeming the people. You see, it will be for the purpose of ushering us into thanksgiving and praise to Yahuwah for what has been done. You see, and so the priesthood will be reinstated, but not for the purpose of redeeming. Whereas under the old contract, the purpose of the priesthood was their main goal, main purpose was for the redemption of the people. But that contract was broken. There was a problem with that contract, and so Yahuwah did away with that contract by coming himself to be the atonement on our behalf. And so that's what Shahul is talking about here. And again, what he's talking about is purely from the perspective of redemption. It is important for us to understand this. Now, as we continue to read, we're going to see this more clearly. So now we go on to chapter 9. Now, the first contract indeed had regulations of worship and the earthly set apart place. For a tent was prepared, the first part in which was the lampstand and the table and the showbread, which is called the set apart place. And after the second veil, the part of the tent which is called the most set apart place, and to which belonged the golden censer and the ark of the contract overlaid on all sides with gold, in which were the golden pot that held the manna, and the rod of Aharon that budded, and the tablets of the contract. And above it, the cherubim of esteem were overshadowing the place of atonement, about which we do not now speak in detail. But in the second part, the high priest went alone once a year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for transgressions of ignorance of the people. The set apart spirit signifying this, that the way into the most set apart place was not yet made manifest, while the first tent has a standing. Okay, so the way into the most set apart place was not yet made manifest while the first tent was still standing. Because the fact of the matter is that the animal sacrifices could not secure the people's entrance into the most set apart place. That's why only the high priest could enter. While there were animal sacrifices, the people could not enter. And so the old contract did not secure a way of entrance for the people, you see. Now, which was a parable. So the set apart spirit signifying this, that the way into the most set apart place was not yet made manifest, while the first tent has a standing, which was a parable for the present time, in which both gifts and slaughters are offered, which are unable to perfect the one serving as to his conscience. And so what he is saying is that the slaughterings and the gifts that were brought, they were unable to perfect the one serving. Even the priest and anyone else for that matter, the slaughterings could not and did not perfect them. You see, and because Yahuwah knew this, that's why he told them, he gave the command that you are to tie a rope around the priest and that you are to put bell on the bottom of his garment. Because if he come in there and he's not right, he's going to stop moving. And when you hear those bells stop tinkling, and when there is no sound coming from the most set apart place, don't you dare come in to get him. You pull on that rope and you take him out because he came before me and he wasn't right. You see? And so he says that even the offerings that were being brought could not perfect, they were unable to perfect the one serving as to his conscience. Now, does this mean that the sacrifices are done away with? No. But in regards to what? Let me ask that question, family. The sacrifices are not done away with, but they're done away with in regards to one thing. What is that? And so some people teach that the sacrifices are done away with, period. The sacrifices are not done away with, period. But the sacrifices are done away with in regards to one thing, redemption. Absolutely. The sacrifices are done away with in regards to redemption. So when we return to sacrificing, it is not for redemption, it is for remembrance. You see? When we return to sacrificing, it is not for redemption, it is for remembrance. You see? It is for thanksgiving. It is for praise of what Yahuwah has done on our behalf. And so the sacrifices are done away with in regards to redemption, but not in regards to remembrance. Okay? And that's what Shahul is saying here. Okay, which was a parable for the present time, in which both gifts and slaughters are offered, which are unable to perfect the one serving as to his conscience, only as to foods and drinks, and different washings, and fleshly regulations imposed until a time of setting matters straight. Okay, um, now, okay, but Mashiach, having become a high priest of the coming good matters, through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, entered into the most set apart place once for all, once and for all, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, having obtained everlasting redemption. Again, what Shahul is dealing with, the whole point of his letters to the people is about redemption and what is required for redemption. People make the writings of Shahul about something else when that's not what Shahul's writing is about. When Shahul talk about the Torah being done away, he's talking about the old contract being put away by Yahuwah and a new contract being established. What is this contract? The contract of redemption. That's what Shahul is talking about. He's not talking about all of Torah. He's talking about the contract in Torah that deals with redemption. So, but Mashiach, having become a high priest of the coming good matters, through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, is he saying that the Haykal is done away with? No. He is again talking about in the perspective, from the perspective of redemption. Okay? Tent not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, entered into the most set apart place once and for all, not with blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood, having obtained everlasting redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the defiled, sets apart for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Mashiach, who through the everlasting Spirit offered himself unblemished to Elohim, to his fullness, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim? If the blood of animals and the ashes of the heifer could at one time set you apart, how much more the sacrifice of Yahuwah himself, is the question he's asking. And because of this, he is the mediator of a renewed contract, so that death having taken place for redemption of the transgressions under the first contract. Again, he is dealing with the contract of redemption. He's not talking about all of Torah. He's talking to a people about how to get back into right standing with Yahuah. That's what all of Shahul's letters is about. How to get back into right standing with Yahuah. He's not even dealing with the rest of the stuff. In the book of Acts, he says, listen, right now what I want you to do is abstain from blood and a couple other things. And the rest of it you'll learn as you come Shabbat after Shabbat and we read from the scriptures. You see, so he's trying to give them the basics because this is a people who have lost touch of how things are. And then you have people who are telling them things that are false, you see, and so he's trying to correct that. So he's dealing with redemption. That's what Shahul is dealing with in all of his letters, and that's the point that many people continue to miss today. And because they continue to miss that point, they continue to misunderstand the writings of Shahul, and then they go and bear false witness against Shahul, saying that Shahul says that Torah is done away with, when that's not what Shahul is talking about at all. Not once. He is talking about the Torah of redemption, what's required, because a change came concerning redemption. A new Torah, a new contract was issued concerning redemption, and that's what Shahul is dealing with throughout his writings. For where a contract is, verse 16, it is necessary for the death of the contracted one to be established. For a contract over those dead is firm, since it is never valid while the contracted one is living. Therefore, not even the first contract was instituted without blood. For when according to Torah, in other words, what he is saying is Mashiach had to die in order to validate the contract. In other words, what he's saying is he is simply repeating what Torah says, that in order for there to be redemption for transgression, blood must be shed. Somebody has to die. If blood is going to be shed, the scriptures tells us that the life is in the blood, and so a life has to be taken in order for the contract to be valid. And that's the simple point that he's making. He says, for when according to Torah every command had been spoken by Masha to all the people, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the contract which Elohim commanded you. And in the same way he sprinkled with blood both the tent and all the vessels of the service. And according to the Torah, almost all is cleansed with blood. And without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. You see, he's again quoting Yahuwah's instructions. It was necessary then that the copies of the heavenly ones should be cleansed with these. What's the copies of the heavenly ones? He's talking about the Haykal on the earth, a copy of the heavenly one. But the heavenly ones, the people now themselves, those set apart from above, don't mean ones who are going to be living in heaven. That's not what it is saying. But the heavenly ones themselves with better slaughter offerings than these. Okay, the ones set apart from above. It's a Christian translation that make it sound like it's talking about people who are going to be living in the heavens. For Mashiach has not entered into a set apart place made by hand, figures of the true, but in the heavens itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim on our behalf. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priest enters into the set apart place. And again, I question whether or not even verse 24 should be there the way it is there. For Mashiach has not entered into a set apart place made by hand, because the way it's translated is as if Yahuwah now continued to exist separately in the heavens, when that's not the case, according to scripture. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priest enters into the set apart place year by year with blood not his own. For if so, he would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now he has appeared once for all at the end of the ages to put away transgression by the offering of himself. And as it awaits men to die once, and after this the judgment, so also Mashiach, having been offered once to bear the transgressions of many, shall appear a second time apart from transgression to those waiting for him unto deliverance. We're going to go to chapter 10, which is going to basically seal or put the icing on the cake of everything that we have just read. Shahul is getting ready now to explain expressly and totally himself everything that he has been saying to this point. Okay, now, chapter 10. For the Torah having a shadow of the good matters to come, and not the image itself of the matters, was, watch this now, for the Torah, he's not talking about the entire writings of Yahuwah. He's talking about the law of redemption. Torah means the instruction of redemption. The instruction dealing with redemption is what he is speaking about. He's not talking about every contract of Torah. He's talking specifically about the contract dealing with redemption. Keep that in mind. For the Torah, Torah of redemption, having a shadow of the good matters to come, Torah of redemption. What did the Torah of redemption look like? The Torah of redemption had in it the service of the Kahanim, the service of the priest. The Torah of redemption had in it bulls. The Torah of redemption had in it goats. The Torah had in it birds. The Torah had in it these sacrifices that were necessary for purifying and putting people into right standing with Yahuwah. So this is the Torah that Shahul is dealing with. The contract that dealt with putting us back into right standing with Yahuwah. This is not dealing with the contract that deals with how we are to treat one another on a daily basis. This is not dealing with how you're not supposed to lay with another one who looks like you. This is not dealing with any of that stuff. This specifically, the Torah that Shahul is speaking about is actually dealing with the issue of redemption. And why is Shahul dealing with the issue of redemption? Because Shahul was called to reach out to the scattered people. And while he's reaching out to the scattered people, a people who had lost their identity, a people who had lost the word of Yahuwah, a people who had lost their way because they were divorced by Yahuwah, and the people who now are being told that the only way you can be redeemed and brought back into right standing with Yahuwah is for you to go and see the priest, get yourself a goat, get yourself a sheep, get yourself a bull, and go and redeem yourself. That's the only way now you can be in right standing with Yahuwah. That's what Shahul is dealing with, of people who are being told these things. And so Shahul has to correct the heresy. And so he is dealing with the Torah of redemption. He is explaining to them what's now involved with redemption, because the old contract dealing with redemption, there was a fault with it. And the fault was not with Yahuwah, the fault was with us, the people. And so Yahuwah saw fit to make a new contract, and that new contract involved Yahuwah himself coming to shed his own blood on our behalf, and then committing to live within us, and where he says that you will no longer need for any man to teach you, but I am going to live on the inside of you, and I will cause you to know me. That's the Torah that Shahul is dealing with. So he says, for the Torah having a shadow of the good matters to come. Yeah, the Torah of redemption, the bull, the goat, and every other sacrifice needed for redemption was simply a shadow of what was to come, the good matter, Yahuwah, that was to come. In other words, the Torah of redemption, like all the rest of Torah, pointed to Yahuwah. The Torah of redemption was saying, look forward, because one day Yahuwah is coming to redeem you. That's what the lamb represented. That's what the bull represented. That's what the sacrifices of cleansing represented. That's what the offerings represented, that your Redeemer is coming. You see, they're just a picture of what's to come. And so he says, for the Torah having a shadow of the good matters to come, and not the image itself of the matters. Yep, Yep, yep. The goat is not an image of Yahuwah. Don't go worshiping no goat. The bull is not an image of Yahuwah. Don't go worshiping no bull. Or whatever else is not an image of Yahuwah. Do not go worshiping them. So he says, for the Torah having a shadow of the good matters to come, and not the image itself of the matters, was never able to make perfect those who draw near with the same slaughter offerings which they offer continually year by year. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? Question. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? That's the question he's asking. He said, if those sacrifices were able to put the people into right standing with Yahuwah permanently, then would they not have ceased to be offered? Because you wouldn't need to keep coming year after year with them, week after week with them, if they were able to make you perfect. You see, that's the point that Shahul is trying to convey to the people, and that's the point that Yahuwah is still trying to convey to these people today who are running around telling people that Zit save you, that circumcision save you, and that all these other things save you. Is still the point that Yahuwah is still trying to convey to his people today. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered? Because those who served, once cleansed, would have had no more consciousness of transgressions. But in those offerings is a reminder of transgression year by year. For it is impossible for blood of bulls and goats to take away transgressions. It is impossible. Therefore, coming into the world, he says, slaughtering and meal offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. In burnt offerings, he's quoting from Tahalim, in burnt offerings and offerings of transgression you did not delight. Then I said, see, I come. In the raw, in the volume, in the roll of the book, it has been written concerning me to do your desire, O Elohim. Saying above, slaughter and meal offering and burnt offerings and offerings for sin, you did not desire, nor delighted in, which are offered according to the Torah. Again, as we continue to read, family, we see that the key point that Shahul is stuck on, the point that he is trying to convey eagerly and fervently every step of the way, is the point of redemption. How are you redeemed, Yasharal? How are we redeemed? That's what he's trying to convey to them. And when he talk about Torah, he's talking about that Torah. He's talking about that contract, the contract of redemption. Then I said, see, I come in the roll of the book. Now let me continue verse 9. Then he said, see, I come to do your desire, O Elohim. He takes away the first to establish the second. He takes away the first to establish the second. Some people say that's abomination, that Yahuwah didn't take away the first. That's fallacy. Shahul is a false prophet. Really? Yahuwah didn't take away the first? Really? Yahuwah didn't take away the first? I thought even Yahu the prophet and even Yashayahu the prophet said that Yahuwah would take away the first. That the day would come when he would make a new contract with Yasharal. And what would the contract be? Where he would dwell in us, where he, his Ruach, would dwell in us, and that he would lead us, that he would teach us, where he would redeem us. I thought all throughout the scriptures it said that. Same thing Shahul is saying. Then he said, see, I come to do your desire, O Elohim. He takes away the first to establish the second. What's the second? Yahusha, replacing the sacrifices of redemption. So no more sacrifice for redemption is needed because Yahusha became our sacrifice. Yahuwah became our sacrifice for redemption. And in so doing, he established a new contract because there was a problem with the first contract, and the problem was us. I believe the issue that people have accepting this truth is the fact that they're too prideful to acknowledge that they're jacked up, that we're jacked up, that we have messed up, and that we have polluted Yahuwah's word and profaned it time and time again. And because they don't want to admit that, then they say, oh, there was nothing wrong with the first one, and therefore nothing has been changed. Yes, it had to be changed because of us and for no other reason. By that desire, we have been set apart through the offering of the body of Yahusha HaMashiach once for all. And indeed, every priest stands day by day doing service and repeatedly offering the same slaughter offerings, which are never able to take away transgressions or sins. But he, having offered one slaughter offering for transgressions for all time, sat down at the right hand of Elohim. And again, the way that's translated is ifi to me. waiting from that time onward until his enemies are made a footstool for his feet. For by one offering he has perfected for all time those who are being, those who are being, those who are being set apart. Let me read verse 14 again. For by one offering he has perfected for all time those who are being set apart. So you see people who run around talking about they are set apart as if they have arrived. Watch them, you see, because we have not yet arrived. We are being set apart. For by one offering he has perfected for all time those who are being set apart. Again, what is Shahul all about? What have we seen this entire time? It's all about putting us back into right standing with Yahuwah. The Torah that Shahul talk about is the Torah that deals with putting us back into right standing with Yahuwah. That is his whole point. That's the only thing he's talking about because it's what the people needed to hear in that time, at that moment. And the set apart spirit also witnesses to us, for after having said before, this is the contract that I shall make with them after those days, says Yahuwah, giving my Torah into their hearts, and in their minds I shall write them. And their transgressions and their lawlessness I shall remember no more. Now, where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer a slaughter offering for sin. What did he say? Did he say that there is no longer slaughter offerings? No. Did he say that there's no longer slaughter offerings, period, as some people say, Shahul says? No. He did not say, Shahul has never stated that Yahuwah has done away with slaughter offerings, period. What Shahul said is this, that there are no longer a slaughter offering. Watch it now, family. A slaughter offering for sin. This is what Shahul says. Let me see. Shahul never said, people say this all the time, that Shahul said that the slaughterings are done away with. People say it all the time. The Christians say it, and people who are called the other Christians say it. That's people of Yasharal who are misguided, who are guilty of the same things as the Christians, guilty of not reading well enough. They say Shahul says sacrifices are done away with. Shahul never said sacrifices are done away with, period. What did Shahul say, dear family? No longer a slaughter offering for transgression, for sin. No longer is that offering needed. But slaughter offerings will continue. The slaughter offerings of remembrance will continue. Shahul never said that all slaughter offerings are done away with. He said slaughter offering, no longer a slaughter offering for sin, for transgression is needed. Is that right? Absolutely, it's right. Okay? So, brothers, having boldness to enter into the set apart place by the blood of Yahusha, by a new and living way which he instituted for us through the veil, that is, his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of Elohim, let us draw near with a true heart, in completeness of belief, having our hearts sprinkled from a wicked conscience, and our bodies washed with clean water. Let us, talking about immersion, let us hold fast the confession of our expectation without yielding, for he who promised is trustworthy. And let us be concerned for one another in order to stir up love and good works. You hear what he said? They say Shahul don't talk about works. When all throughout Shahul's writing, Shahul tell us that we must stir up love and good works. You see, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. And this question came up this past Shabbat. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging, and so much more as you see the day coming near. For if we transgress purposely after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a slaughter offering for sins. There no longer remains a slaughter offering for sins, but some fearsome anticipation of judgment, and a fierce fire which is about to consume the opponents, figuratively speaking there. Anyone who has disregarded the Torah of Masha, Is this Shahul talking? You hear what Shahul says? Anyone who has disregarded the Torah of Masha dies without compassion on the witness of two or three witnesses. How much worse punishment do you think shall he deserve, who has trampled the servant of Elohim underfoot, counted the blood of the contract by which he was set apart as common, and insulted the spirit of favor? He say, if imagine the one who denies Mashiach, the judgment that will come upon that one. That's what he is saying. For we know him who has said, vengeance is mine, I shall repay, says Yahuah. And again, Yahuah shall judge his people. It is fearsome to fall into the hands of the living Elohim, but remember the former days, when after you were enlightened, you endured a great struggle with sufferings. On the one hand, you were exposed to reproaches and pressures, and on the other hand, you became sharers with those who were so treated. And what he's talking here, remember who Shahul is talking to, remember who his audience is. He is talking to Yasharal who were scattered, he's talking to Yasharal who were divorced, and now the divorced Yasharal, the scattered Yasharal, is now coming to back to a knowledge of Yahuah, and he's letting them know that the only way you can come to Yahuah is through Hamashiach, Yahuah Hamashiach. And that brought persecution upon the people. As a matter of fact, Shahul himself was one of their greatest persecutors because they believed upon Yahuah Hamashiach. When they believed upon Yahuah Hamashiach, they suffered persecution, and that's what he's making reference to here. He was one of their greatest persecutors. Do not then lose your boldness, which has great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the desire of Elohim, you receive the promise. For yet a little while, he who is coming shall come and shall not delay, but the righteous shall live by belief. But if anyone draws back, by my being has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who draw back to destruction, but of belief to the preservation of life. Allahu Yahuwah. And so, family, it is my hope that that has made that text clear. So many times it has been misrepresented by so many people who teach falsely. But may Yahuwah be true and every man a liar. All right. Well, once again, we give Yahuwah praise, honor, and esteem, family. I try my best not to keep you long here tonight, but before we close out, I just want to know, praise Yahuwah, all esteem be to Yahuwah, family. Just want to know if there are any comments or questions before we close out. To the same to you, Aki. The same to you. I know morning come quick. Praise Yahuwah. Praise Father. Praise Yahuwah. Well, once again, family, I give Yahuwah praise, honor, and esteem um, for for this time, for this fellowship, and for His Word. And may His Word continue to be a baraka to us all. Hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah. Praise Father. Well, we're gonna close out. Uh, we're gonna close out, family, and I'm gonna attempt to just post this this lesson uncut as it is to YouTube for the benefit of uh, uh, anyone who need to hear it. Okay, so I'll do that because it's again one of those subject matters that where our people are just totally confused and wrong on, and it's just unfortunate to watch. Praise Father Akut. Yes, so we'll do. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording here, and we're gonna close out.